Hello, everybody. Welcome to Delicately Wild. I have Marina with me today. And for those of you that are new on the show, welcome. This is a podcast about human evolution. This is a conversation about ascension, about ascension, about consciousness and spirituality, about the heart, and about existentiality. What are we doing here? How do we perceive our reality? Obviously, the planet is going through major shifts at the moment, and it is presenting in our fields as absolute chaos, madness, and mayhem. So, how do we kind of steer the waters of what it is we are experiencing in our holographic field, if that is even your perception? So, we kind of dive deep in this show with regards to other human beings. They may be your neighbors. We are not big names. We are just people. We are all the same: skin, blood, and a heartbeat. And so we bring these conversations to life. And again, my experience is basically as a medicine woman and shaman. I am very, very interested in ascension mechanics, or at this stage, we would call it ascension mechanics. It's always been my passion. And then working with the plants has really taught me what I needed to know about metaphysical aspects, realms, the soul, afterlives, timelines, all of these beautiful and tricky things. So, and also simple things. So yes, without further ado, I welcome Marina onto the show. Hey, Marina, how are you doing?
Hi, Brigitte. How are you? I'm good.
Good, good, good. I mean, guide us through. I invited Marina to the show and thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting one and an exciting one, because our meeting a couple of years back was something that will be etched into my memory. I have no doubt for this lifetime and many other incarnations. And although it was somewhat of a harrowing and simultaneously mystical experience, it definitely solidified a friendship between the two of us, which couldn't have happened in any other way. And of course, the way I look at my reality, I'm like, everything is divinely perfect. It's in divine perfection. So I guess that would be a segue into beginning our conversation. But Marina, you can really start wherever you want. You're a sovereign being. So share a little bit about us or where you're at. I also know you have started a new business, but essentially, I think it's easy to just start at the beginning of your awakening and what that looked like.
Um, well, if you can imagine an earthquake and a whirlwind and a wildfire all at once,
Yes.
that's, that was the beginning. But like, I mean, I don't really even know where to start. But I think the best place was that I obviously did a ceremony with you, a
Mm,
private one. Um, at a point where I was in a very weird place because everything that I had known or was good at in this 3D world, like the the systems. I was very good at the traditions and the systems of living. And then all of a sudden it felt, well, it wasn't all of a sudden, I guess it was incrementally becoming more obvious in very difficult ways that there was something missing, that I wasn't, although I was doing so well in the world, um, which to me seemed like thriving, it just became really apparent that I was suffering.
mm,
But suffering in a way that is normalized.
mm.
Suffering in a way that, well,
We've
if
all
you want
consented
to be
to.
these things, absolutely. And I thrived on it. I loved being an achiever. I loved like only believing ever in things I could see, feel, touch, because I felt that I had control over it. But it just became obvious in difficult ways that something is not right. And what I found was that now, in hindsight, that the universe or energy speaks to you in ways that you'll understand. So it will speak to you in ways that affect your ego. So I ended up, being ill, like having eczema and psoriasis and having difficulty with intimate relationships. And the way the consciousness started to speak to me was via the ego, to create that disruption, to make the suffering meaningful to me, you know, to hurt me in a way that I would be hurt, where I'd feel it.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet, and it's actually so incredibly intelligent
Yes.
to devise ways to speak to you, to create just the sweetest amount of excruciating discomfort that will only talk to you,
Yes.
so that you will look for something more.
Very nicely said.
It's, yeah, and at the time I was like, why me? I mind my own business. I eat really healthy. I live in my lane. I do everything right. But why is this happening to me? Why am I getting ill? Why are things around me feeling just like I'm going against the grain? And the worst thing is, when I look back, I always had this feeling, but I would cover it up with being good at like work or studying, or, climbing like the corporate or social ladders. Like, so I would just dive deeper into those things to kind of avoid the truth. But as I said, it's so excruciatingly sweet the way it comes for you in ways that only you, it will only appeal to you. And that's what happened. And then I was like, okay, I got to do something new. I have to do something different. And it wasn't even my idea. It was on a whim. My husband did a group ceremony with you the night before, and he told me, you should really do this with Brigitte. And just the next day, I said, okay, let's do it. And I was never the same.
No.
Understatement of my lifetime.
Impossible for that to be a truth in any way, shape, or form. Impossible.
No. My whole world was just rocked. And, it's like if you're blind and someone wants to explain what the color red looks like, that's how difficult it is for me to explain what the experience was. But it was like a moment in time where everything just shatters.
Yes.
It just explodes and shatters, and then starts to come back in a totally unrecognizable way. But that's you, like, that's me. That, I was never the same. As I said, I was somebody who never believed in anything but what I could see, touch, and feel, hear, smell, like with my sensory body.
So fascinating to me, knowing about your experience. I'm just like, wow. Someone that was so, like you say, to a degree fixated on the physicality, that which we can see, understand, and deal with, control. Yeah.
Absolutely. And,
And it's so
I
interesting
actually,
because if we speak of polarity, like a polarity experience, knowing what your experience is, which we'll go into now, but I've just thought of this now. Let's say that your experience is the complete polarity of your original belief systems of physicality, but the experience of mysticism, or whatever it is we want to label it under, it shows me how strong your belief system was to that physical, as in a complete polarity. So that's quite interesting as well. So yeah, I mean, rocked your world is certainly or shattered one world and revealed
But
the other.
that's exactly right in what you're saying. The intensity of one polarity is that same intensity is, if not more, is applied to the opposite side of the
Correct.
spectrum. Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
the
I'm
very
only thinking of
proportionate.
that now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is powerful.
absolutely. So yeah, that intensity with which you apply to the physicalities and the egoic life,
Mm,
you take the same intensity with you because it's your intensity, it's you. You're just
yes.
now applying it to something different.
Yes.
Dare I say, obviously better, but something else. Um, and I'll be honest, I despised people who, or the ideas of anything esoteric, mystical, anything where people would say, oh, something like, you know, um, I let it be, or like the universe will take care of it, or prayer, my God, just anything. I despised it. Like I wouldn't even go near. And I often now, in hindsight, ask myself, why was it like almost an allergic reaction?
Mm.
I think it was, my fears that if I did explore it, I may find something else. And my ego was just so afraid it would just
But also,
keep me away
you
from
could have been persecuted at one point of time for your skill set. And I have no doubt that that is a true statement in our collective reality and our collective memories of the seeding of our genetics on the planet. I mean, we always are, we are pure consciousness. So there's no way you haven't gone through a persecution timeline for your gifts. And I mean, what transpired in that ceremony and session was a display of gifts, extrasensory gifts that you had no idea were laying dormant there. And I had not seen to this capacity. I mean, they were strong, they were
exactly.
strong. So there obviously
Yeah.
was a huge persecution somewhere.
Yeah, I think, as we're speaking and it's like, coming back at me and like the feelings, make no mistake that every single day I think of the experience.
Wow.
Every single day, it's like a compass that has been recalibrated. It's a guiding experience. It is the single most influential experience of my lifetime,
Yes.
to the point where I changed my life completely. I was never the same, as I said. But the plant, the mycelium, I had this experience with you, and you were integral in the navigation and facilitation of it. And I don't think anybody else could have done that for me because, in a way, you understood me so well without
Mm.
knowing me.
Yes.
You understood my fears. You understood my rigidness,
Mm.
you know, um, and you were able to navigate me to a point that, it was not rainbows and butterflies.
No.
It was fear. It was
Confusion.
the most scared I've ever been in
I
my
was going to
life.
say, absolutely terrifying. Yeah, terrifying. And it's so
Where,
interesting because I'll speak to certain parts of the journey just from the psychological aspect of the space holding. It's like in the beginning, It came on very hard, very strong, very fast. I did lower her dose because I knew she was quite an open channel. We'd done breath work before, right? I just remember the violet lights. That's all I remember when I was preparing for this, for your breath work. Anyway, in observation of this, there's usually this like joy and elation that comes, and it's a very like childlike expression of just wonder, and bewilderment and excitement and disbelief, but in the most childlike way of like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing the ascended masters through you. Have we been together in another timeline? And I'm seeing us here together, and I'm seeing, and you were just like giddy. It's a nice word, like giddy, drunk,
Yeah.
drunk on the kaleidoscope of the imagery that was coming forward at that time. And I remember we had a weather shift, and you were standing outside, and it started to rain, and I said, come under the cover, and you were like, no, why? And I was like, I can see what's going to happen, because I can't verbalize it at the time because I don't want to project or superimpose, but it's like, I mean, without giving the drama of the story, but it's like, if you're on a deep mushroom experience and you're fine the 1 minute, and all of a sudden you go into that shadowy side, which is bound to happen, particularly with new people, and they're drenched, and they're in simultaneous memories and timelines at all one point in time. When they look at themselves, it's like a bad movie. You could see yourself covered in blood, or now you're drenched wet, and you're like, how did I get when did this happen? And so then this doubt starts coming in. And yeah, it can move to terror in a second, a split second. Yeah.
Yeah. The terror was, I still think back to it. At the time, I also don't believe that I was a very grounded person. So I spent a lot of time in my head, in thoughts. The experience of what was happening was this jubilation, this awe, because I was moving through spaces where everything was, there was holographic kaleidoscopes and of imagery and color, and seeing things as non-physical, like looking at you and seeing you as somebody, as an ascended master, as Mother Teresa, as seeing you in different ways that were real at some point in time.
Yes.
Like it's not that there's something in you that believes it so deeply that you know that it's true. There's no issue of truth. There's no issue of not knowing. It's done. But there's so many aspects that you're trying to assimilate and digest. And one of, like at the same time, when I'm looking at you and you're looking like Mother Teresa to me, you must know that at the same time, I'm being absorbed by the earth. Like I
Yes.
am no longer, I don't have a body. I don't know what I am. I was just melting into the ground.
Yeah.
And then there's this aspect of your conscious mind that starts to creep in that wants you to be scared. And then you ask yourself, but won't I suffocate as I'm being absorbed into the ground? Like it's those aspects that fear keeps coming in. But it's so beautiful at the same time because you're connecting. I mean, I was the ground, I was the grass. I could talk to the trees. There were animals on that property that I knew their thoughts. I knew where they came from. They were talking to me. There were wolves that I could talk to from a different timeline that I know were there.
Yes.
That were like very protective. And it was just, they were, I was talking to people that had died. They were communicating with me. I'm shivering and kind of shaking at the moment because it comes back with so much of intensity, because you can never unfeel it. You can never unsee it. You can never unknow it.
And what's
And that's why
fascinating is prior to that point, you would never have, like you say, you were very much in the physical reality, probably, I think, lying along the lines of atheism, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yet in that moment, all of that disappears. So the ego disappears, the soul, the higher self, the oversoul, the monadic soul, all of it steps in, and it's like, and now all of a sudden you're like, yes, I'm listening to wolves, the dead are speaking to me, I'm perceiving this from a timeline, which is never a word you would have used, and all of it makes sense. And then, like you say, the rational mind has a split second, and the ego to come in and be like, whoa, what is going on here? And it's that which we have to dance with and be like, no, but we have no roadmap. On your first ceremony, you have no roadmap. So
you just don't know how crazy you are until you're there.
Yeah.
You just don't know how it's gonna explode, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Are.
Exactly. And that's what they say fear is, right? It's just fear of the unknown. Yeah. Or false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. The fact that I could communicate with people that had passed, who had messages for me, who told me things about people that were in my life that kind of needed assistance, or I was supposed to do something for them. It was just, but what was strange was that when I was getting those messages, and it's not like somebody's coming in and talking to me, it's all energetic and like telepathic, and it's a blue light, it's energy, it's so hard to explain, but what's happening.
Yeah.
And it kind of validates a lot of things that I did at one point, in my life. Well, somewhere along my consciousness or my field, my energy field, there was a thought of that at some point. But obviously I would brush it off because it's so ridiculous.
Yes.
It doesn't fit in with my beliefs, with society, with everything. And, there was this amazing moment where I just completely, in every way that you would use to describe yourself, dissolved into nothing. It was just, everything was just this haze of like almost this iridescent fogginess, this haze. And, you elevate beyond it to understand that everything is energy, everything is one. It's hard because, as I said, it's like explaining a color to a blind person. It's hard to explain the experience, but once you've had it, you can never unknow it.
Yeah, and it is validated within your soul. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
The fear aspect, because I was, as you said, I've never used those words before that experience: timelines, dimensions. Time has no meaning. There is no time. There's nothing. It's all now one. I've never used those phrases or words or understood any of it, but it all made sense.
Yeah.
More than this reality makes sense.
And it's so interesting because Marina had mentioned that her husband had done ceremony work with me, and I remember him, and I gave him the full dose, and he kind of came out in his debriefing and said, no, I don't feel anything. And I was just like, bro, you were so out. Like, your consciousness can't comprehend what it is you've experienced. So it's happened in a higher dimensional space, but the information hasn't processed through yet. And that's sometimes what happens. And then here comes in his wife, who's just had like the platinum package of what would we call it? yeah, the platinum package of coming online, this all the soul aspects of one coming online, like, you know, a date with destiny, like done, dusted, platinum package received. You know, how did that impact your life? Because, you know, speaking to those going through awakening, we go through many shifts, and often we start to look at people and be like, oh my gosh, they're not in my, everything has changed. So how did that affect you guys? And how did you dance through that? And what's your experience been there? And also you changed
Uh,
your job as well, right? But took some time.
Sorry, Brigitte, I didn't hear that.
I
I
said you
changed
also
my.
you ended up changing your job as well. I can't remember
Oh
the
yeah,
timeline though. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so before we go into like how the changes, if it's okay, I would
Okay.
like to touch on the fear aspect just once more because
Yes.
I had a terrifying experience uh, towards the latter part. Um, you know, that really was, it just shook me to the core,
Mm,
where I had felt that, at some time or dimension, I had been in some way um, violated,
mm,
you know. Um, and also, I, because when you're in that space and you're not sure of time and space, it felt very real and it felt quite current.
mm,
Um, Obviously, it was not, but I also know that that feeling has been with me
mm, mm.
previously. Just I never really shone a light on it because it had no
You didn't
as
create the
it
space
had
for
no
it.
substance. Yeah, there was no space for it because it's something that, why is this in my field of consciousness but doesn't fit into my physical life,
Mm,
because it's not what has happened to me in this life.
mm,
But definitely things that happen in other timelines or lives, past lives, some of them are like so strong that they imprint and they stay
mm.
with you, and it needs that resolution. But that was one of the, the most fearful time of my life, like because at that point time also has no meaning.
Correct.
So am I in that
Experience.
timeline experiencing it, or is it like memory coming back from a time? It's just, it's a very confusing space, and therefore
Yes.
yeah, you need a, obviously a very experienced facilitator to ground you,
Mm,
or
mm.
you like derail.
Well, it's very interesting because we were speaking about this to one of the new initiates that I'm working with another Sangoma friend of mine. And we're talking about the journey spaces and mushrooms and, you know, how everyone has such an entirely different experience, but how we have to understand as human beings within the facilitation space that the human psyche will reach a certain point where there's nothing that you can do or say that is going to slipstream someone out of that. And perhaps that is exactly where they need to be. They need to sit in that thing. And in that time and space bubble, the only thing that you can, your only job is to keep that person safe, because they are fully in that story, the timeline, the whatever, they are fully in there. And you'd be a fool to try and perceive anything otherwise. Like, they are deeply in the space, and it's usually quite a traumatic space. It's usually imprisonment, or like you said, violation, or imprisonment, violation. I mean, these are two big ones. And as a facilitator, you can kind of see this coming in, and your only job is safety. And that was the protocol that was then instilled, you know, of like, there's certain protocols that I need to take now that are not part of the normal protocol, that I would not usually do, but this is the highest timeline at this point in time, and it goes against everything I want to do, everything that I perceived would happen as a wonderful, beautiful ending to this, but it is the exact thing that has to happen right now. It is the only thing that can happen, other than me like pinning you down, which in that situation that you were going through would have been the worst possible thing, obviously. So yeah, it's like, it's understanding that the human psyche can get to these points where they just need to sit within that, and we have to just hold the space in safety. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, short of pinning me down. But it was, but it didn't, even though that was a part of the experience, which I have no regrets.
Yeah.
I am so grateful for, absolutely, like, to me now, it added to the richness of it because it's what I needed at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at my best times anyway, that's, my personality. I'm a little bit, you know, some people say I'm too much. It's like I'm always a little bit, uh, I'm but extreme, like I'll do it fully. I don't intend to. It's never my intention, but it's just how things usually work out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, in saying that there was this aspect that was incredibly scary and incredibly real to me. As you're saying, there was no way I was going to perceive something else.
No.
You know,
No.
that was what was happening, and
Yeah.
you needed to roll with it and just do what was needed,
Yeah.
at the time, and you did. I don't believe anybody else would have navigated me or facilitated me or guided me as you did. And I'm forever grateful for that, and that experience. And then talking about, just from your side, Brigitte, how was it for you? Because it's quite it's quite intense, and like now, you have this person who's wiling out and you have to keep them safe, and you can't really rationalize with them, as I'm saying, you have to
Yeah.
live their reality.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Because we never, debriefed on that side of
Yeah.
things.
Beautiful question. Yeah, it's so in the moment, I feel like I am pretty grounded, alert, and present to that which is presenting in my reality, as in, you are having XYZ experience, and these are the actions I need to take. So there's not much space for me to dive into a story of fear or panic. I don't have time for that. And so I guess I'm a quick problem solver from that perspective of like, this is what I need to do. And so I took a certain course of action. However, afterwards, once you had left the space, and that night when I went to bed, it was an absolute shit show of emotions for me, because obviously I'm far more experienced now, and that there's something that's experience brings, and that's wisdom of understanding, like I said, that everything happens for a reason. And there's certain things I would change, but ultimately, based on what occurred, I think I did the best. And I feel like, even though that evening I was going through the emotions of the trauma of it, because it's also traumatic to me, but knowing that, for example's sake, just to let you guys know, the next morning I called them in and I said, I'm not flying away until this conversation is had. And in that conversation, I'm very much in my power again, and felt pride in the way that I had come to accountability and responsibility, and to give the teachings of that which occurred. So, I think that shows a certain integrity of a person, And, you know, to have done that, no matter what your response would have been, you know, whether it would have been hate me, love me, that's what I needed to do. And I do, that, you know, this work takes huge accountability and responsibility. So, and after I'd had that meeting with you, and particularly you in the morning already being so in tune with going, listen here, babes, like, you know, your husband was quite angry with me. But you were immediately in awareness of what had occurred, what the download was. You could feel me, you understood. And that to me was like, well, then the work is done, you know.
Yeah.
The work is done. So
Absolutely.
I mean, you had another experience with me a couple of years later. It's not been so long ago in Johannesburg. And I actually
Yeah.
just thought of that now. I forgot about that ceremony. I, I'm curious to ask you again what it is you saw. I remember your spot
Oh,
right next to me.
yeah. Um, so that experience was completely different, and the reason that I wanted to do another one was because um, I didn't want one experience
Mm,
to set the tone of everything, you know, like I wanted to have a different experience. Because that was an incredibly powerful nuclear kind of experience.
yeah,
And, you know, and I wanted something a little more chilled.
embodied.
Yeah, embodied, you know. And it's exactly what happened. It was an amazing experience where it was more of a embodied experience where there was releases within my body. So it's not so much a, you know, the mental side of it or the emotional side. I think I had gotten most of that out by then, you know. So, um, but profound realizations of the major one was that, you know, we are all love. Like that's the end. That's we are the vibration of love. Um, we are at our core love. Um, there was some other, you know, personal ones about, you know, my maybe my heritage or the line that I should be following. But one of the major things was I turned and I looked at you because you know you were like, Marina, you're gonna be right here next to me, and I looked at you and you were dying. You were going through the process of dying and living a few times. Like I saw you age, and then you know, and there were lots of these flowers around you. You would age, and then you would die, you would decompose, and then you would be born as a baby. And you would, I'd see you growing up through your teen, you know, being a toddler, teens, adult. And it happened more than once
Mm.
that you were dying and being, I was looking, at first I was like, it's what's going on, you know, what is happening here? You know, and I'm looking at the other facilitator, and he is definitely like a Viking, and I'm looking at, but yours was the most powerful because I can just see it happening. I can see this cycle of
Mm,
and process of death and life and happening to you, and then you've just been reborn. It was, but you know, it wasn't scary at that time.
mm.
That's weird, you know, because you're in that space and you're observing, and yeah, it was just watching you go through the cycle of life and death and being reborn, and it's crazy. It's
I remember you asked me, like, was that a difficult, I think you asked me, like, was that a tough
yes,
ceremony?
it looked.
And I said, yeah, it was tough on me. And then I said, why? And you told me, and I was dying. I was like, yeah, that makes about sense. Like, you know, it's a big space to hold. So, but yeah, I guess that's the calling, that's the blueprint, that's what I came to do, part of what I came to do. The mission seems to be changing now, but as the evolution changes, and our world construct changes, and our needs are different. So this is the interesting thing about the spiritual path. Once you're really embodying, it will change. It'll ask your ego to drop that which you now thought was important and go on a new mission. So my mission is very much, I will always continue to do ceremonies because I love them, but I'll do them sporadically and not half as often as I used to, and maybe more privates. But it's really land generation now, or land accumulation and custodianship, which is, never thought that would be my flag of like, let's do this. But yeah, I think land is really important at the moment. But I was asking you more about, just before we come to the last 10 minutes of the show, we've spoken deeply about your experiences, which we could very, very easily call multidimensional, galactic, cosmic, all the mystical things, call it. And I feel like some people have a psycho-spiritual experience, meaning they may perceive themselves to be experiencing this, but like through my years of experience, it's like this woman's third eye just went boom and started having like all the downloads in 1 second. There was no mistaking it. How did that influence your life afterwards? So I mentioned your husband and I mentioned your job. You're welcome to go into either. We've got about 10 minutes left. So
Sure. My husband's a very chilled, easygoing guy. He's sometimes, and I do believe like in this reality, in this world, he is a guide for me in a lot of ways because he actually brought me to you. So he kind of like shows me these little things with not the intention of it being that, but
yeah.
it always ends up being the right thing for me. So he usually goes and tries something out, and then he realizes, well, actually, I think it's for you. But his experience was different from mine, and still a great experience. I think he was, as you said, a little detached from the experience in a way. But I think in the months thereafter, it integrated into thoughts and behaviors as it does. And um, I would say he's even more grounded and more chilled now. And, he's always been somebody who's kind of very like light-filled and lives by his own rules. So that's still continued. And, he is a very easygoing person and allows me that space to explore and understand without judgment. So I'm very grateful to that for that. And he's just kind of let me go off on my tangent, with support. In saying that, I used to be a consultant for corporates. I used to work between Durban and Johannesburg. I have stopped all of that. I am now a hypnosis facilitator that, helps people navigate many different things from anxiety to, eating disorders, spiritual alignments, past lives. I also do energy healings. So
Would you
basically,
look at that,
I
folks?
am.
As I say that, I see our little mushroom over here.
Really, I just flipped the script.
This is the
Actually, I
woman
just
that said if
flipped
you
that
said,
content and
yeah,
I
if you said anything esoteric, even like bless your cotton socks, or kiss this little crystal, or make a little magic wish here, and now she's doing all of the things. I love it.
all of the things. I mean, if someone gave me a crystal before, I would take it and throw it at them. I would be like, take your stone and go.
Your stone, yeah.
Yeah. And now, I'm all about because understand
Of
everything
course.
is energy and everything, I understand also the systems now that we are working in and all the traps that we fall into
Mm.
and how enticing they are
Mm.
and how, so but I'm never, I'm still a novice at this. I would say I'm still navigating it. I'm still trying to cultivate, um, my gifts.
Mm.
But the best way to do that is to always be practicing them instead of putting them in a box and be like, well, I'll get there, I'll get there. No,
Mm.
everything has changed. It's impossible for everything around you to stay the same when you have changed so deeply.
Yeah.
You'll be living a lie that you are aware of before you were living the lie that you are unaware of.
Yes.
Now you're
Yes.
now
Yes.
you know better, and you
Mm.
can't pretend.
No.
You can't. It's impossible. Um, it's impossible.
It's like
You'll
someone
feel
asked
like,
me last
oh,
night, like, what is shadow work? I'm like, shadow work is when something presents in your reality that used to fit perfectly into the puzzle piece. It used to fit perfectly in the box, and it no longer fits. Your body is possibly revolted, disgusted, blocked. It just, you cannot. There's nothing within you where that fits any longer. And that process is going to create confusion or dissonance. And that's the shadow work where you're like, well, but why? And so what is our next path? But, and and like with you, it's like there was this corporate materialism, density, belief system, success, and now she's doing hypnosis and past life therapy.
I know. I mean, people have like said to me, "Oh my God, what happened?" I mean, my mother's like,
I was gonna say, what
"Are
about
you
your
okay?"
family? Yeah,
Um,
ancestral family,
my yeah, my family are there. It's been hard for them to put this image and this person and everything together because they always have known me to be a certain way. But besides being a certain way, also detesting the other way. Like
Yes,
having quite strong negative feelings about
yes,
that and those ideas and those people. And now I am those ideas and those people. And I love it. And I'm unapologetic. And judgment doesn't bother me at all because it holds no weight in
mm.
comparison to my conviction.
Knowing, yeah, your conviction, yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And everybody kind of goes with it because if I am in my truth, it's hard for them to understand at first. But also, they also realize at some point she's still kind of the same. She's a little bit quirky and, a bit off center.
But
And
ultimately, she was our loving daughter.
yes.
Yeah,
And I'm actually doing it better than I did before because before I did
oh,
it out of obligation and duty,
yes,
and now I do it because I really love you.
yes, yes,
There's a difference now.
yes.
Um, so
And I
yeah,
think
so
that
life
that
is,
amount of love really allows the confusion of all the questions that our ancestral family have around, like, where did it go wrong? It's just like, oh, but she's actually wonderful company, and she's been wonderful company for a good 10 years now, or whatever it is. And that's what counts. And I think that's what the ancestral healing is. It's like, I mean, if I were to explain to my dear mother, like, she has no idea, no idea, like no idea and she has a very small piece of the puzzle. And of course, she is my mother, so she knows my nature, right? Um, but yeah, it's interesting, and all we can do is be such good people. And
yeah,
that which we are to them, we are to others, we are to strangers. And I think that's what they begin to see is, wow, like she's being loving to us, but she's also kind to the attendant, and the waiter and this and that. And well, I mean, let's stop asking questions then. Things are going well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's less angry and she's not, miserable to be around, or like she's not gonna fly off the handle. She's actually pretty chill. Okay, we like this new her, so we're not gonna ask too many questions.
And
Except that my mom.
within your new practice now, are those that are coming to you at a certain level of consciousness already aligned to the more esoteric way of healing and approaches, or is it they've come to a point where allopathic medicine is not really assisting? I'm curious to find out what is the main takeaway from that which you were learning through your practice.
Um,
Where are people at? Where is the collective at? I've just lost your sound. Interesting. Well, guys, I think that is it for our show. We've had a technical glitch, but thanks for joining myself and Marina. She might be coming back online now. Let us see, because I feel like that last question was a pretty cool one to hear. I'm always intrigued as to what's happening on the other side. Marina, can you hear me? No.
I can.
Ah,
I don't know why my video. Can you?
I can hear you
Okay, we got.
back.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that's a nice question. What is your takeaway from where are people at? Um, are they empowering themselves, or is there so much programming to still work through? I obviously have my opinion, my perspective, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that come to me or decide to come to me because I give them that option to meet me and then to decide. It becomes very, very clear who is at that level of consciousness that is accepting of these modalities that are open, because if they're not, it will not work.
Mm.
And then it's also very clear, those people who are still in the systems, they're still very indoctrinated and conditioned, and the old me.
Mm.
However, however, there are some, and I know immediately who is here to see me and who maybe just is just on the path out, like it's very clear, because
Mm.
some people are just not ready for it. However, I do feel like I'm in a space where I'm able, because of my old self, I'm able to talk to people in ways in which they can understand.
Yes. Yes, because of your old self. So you create the bridge. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can communicate with them in ways that make sense to them, whilst leading them into a better space,
Mm.
into a new reality.
Mm.
Because you cannot just throw it all at them. You
No.
have to live in their reality and then show them a better way,
Mm.
because otherwise it's too foreign, it's too much to digest, it won't work. So in my space, I'm definitely seeing people who are very at a level that their consciousness is raised, where they can accept these modalities, and they just don't know how to get out of the hole that they're in, and we get there together. And then there are those people where I feel that there is this connection, because I used to be you. I
Mm.
can see me in you,
Yes. Yes.
and I know how to help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
that.
as a last question, in terms of your belief systems at this current moment in time, where are you excelling in your spiritual path, and where do you feel a blockage or
Whoa,
dissonance?
that's a juicy question.
It's juicy. I thought I'd
Um,
end with a bit of juice. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I believe in most at this point is that you can only work on yourself. No matter what the goal is, whether you want to work on your relationship with your spouse or you have a altruistic goal, um, the single best thing you can do is work on you, because everything, once you are aligned and once you're okay, you don't have to do anything. The rest just kind of falls into place
Mm,
and works out. um, for now, I know that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be,
mm,
but I am sometimes a little bit of a restless soul, and I always need to know more, and I'm quite curious in those ways.
mm,
um, I think what I'm really, my blockage would be trusting my intuition.
mm,
I do that. I have that self doubt. Some things are so clear and powerful, and I would still doubt it sometimes. So it's about, nurturing this intuitive gift of,
mm.
because I get into spaces where I can know somebody's thoughts, I can feel them. I know that it's not me, it's somebody else that I'm feeling, but a lot of the time I would kind of shelve it, or like, second guess
Well,
it.
this is exactly the thing about spirituality within our own personal paths, is that the amount and level of trust that is required within the self to not gaslight the self is the most extraordinary, complicated relationship, because and each one of them, each little point along the road is an exercise of trust, right? And also because that which you are trusting in is revealing your skill set to a certain degree. So okay, so we're now trusting in our level of telepathy, or we're trusting in our level of intuition, or we're trusting in our level of channeling. And then there'll always be an opposing construct that'll be presented, where you'll be like, oh, I don't know if I can trust this thing, and the higher you go up the levels of integration, the dimensional levels of integration, you're just integrating new aspects of the self, which may present in further skills or different information or opposing information or galactic history or whatever it is. But it just gets more and more wilder and more out there, in opposed to
Yeah.
the construct. And I had a little wobble yesterday where I was like flying. I was like, I cannot believe what is manifesting in my reality in conjunction to that which I've been working on, da 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 da. But it's like, it's fucking whack, And then, like, at one point, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Are you ungrounded? Like, is this the onset of psychosis? Or, and thank God I did a breathwork ceremony last night. So I come back into action of that which I know through the body. And I'm like, yes, okay, cool. And then today I'm like, no, I'm not ungrounded. This is in fact reality and truth at this point in time. And it's come into my reality because it's in a vibrational match and it's in a consciousness match. But our history is so convoluted and yet so filled with things that we have no idea about. And I'm now exploring this, and it does. You're just like, am I going crazy? And you have to
Yeah.
trust yourself and be like, no, actually, and also be willing enough to let the ego sit aside at one point in time if you are wrong, and say, oh my God, I was so wrong.
Yeah.
you know um
Absolutely.
but we're
Yeah.
just playing and creating, right, to the best of our
Yeah.
capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Marina,
Trying.
thank you for coming on
Oh,
Delicately Wild. You wanted to say something?
no, I just wanted to say, thank you so much. And this really all started with you. And been grateful ever since. And I know that this wasn't our first,
No.
yeah, stunt together. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, and it won't be our last. So yeah, just been absolutely grateful, and I feel like, on this journey, I'm just always, there's just so much to learn
So
or to
much,
connect with again.
so much.
And I've actually never been more excited about life.
Good. That's a beautiful ending. Beautiful ending. Thank you for that sentiment. Because it is exciting and
Yeah.
terrifying, much like your experience. It's all one, guys. And with that, I will close. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that cool stuff that we need to get done if you do as a sovereign being. Really, we're just here to chat and connect our heart frequencies. So, Marina, thank you so much. And everybody have a beautiful, beautiful life. Lots of love. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.